Welcome to our podcast, Living Our Best with Memory Loss. What makes this podcast unique is that 3 of its hosts, Bob, Denis, and SuAnne, have a memory loss diagnosis. The purpose of this podcast is for people to share their experiences with cognitive decline. It is not to provide medical advice. We are not doctors, and we stress that what might have worked for one person might not work for others. If anything you hear on this program inspires you to explore treatment options, we recommend you do so in consultation with your physician.
Hi, welcome to another edition of our podcast, Living Our Best with Memory Loss. I'm not sure if you've ever gone to the website beingpatient.com, but if you haven't, you absolutely need to. Its editor-in-chief, Deborah Kahn, has become a great friend to this podcast. Beingpatient.com is just an unbelievable resource for all things dementia-related, and it's where we discovered a gentleman by the name of Sam Simon. When Sam's wife, Susan, was diagnosed with breast cancer, Sam became her caregiver and was inspired to create a one-man show about his journey navigating her disease. But then suddenly, Sam changes roles, and he becomes the patient when he's diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Sam then creates a one-man show about his diagnosis. We're so honored today to be joined by Susan and Sam Simon to hear about their story and their journey. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having us. And I suspect we're like many people in life that we're surprised to find ourselves in this place and in this moment. At this time, we each had just a brief history. We both come from Texas. We met for a brief moment when we were 16 years old.
Yes.
And then she ended up unexpectedly going to college in El Paso, where I was going to college. We had sort of googly-eyed each other as kids at a convention, and we reacquainted, and it's even part of that we ended up going on a double date, her with another guy, me with another young lady in El Paso, and neither one of those dates were going well, so we switched partners on the way back. And the otother couple got married, and we still see them occasionally, and we got married.
Yeah, but that's a great story.
What a great outcome.
So we reflect back in some ways as meant to be.
Yes.
Right. How, so somebody so unlikely, yet so 24 years ago in 2020, 2000, sorry, 24 years ago in 2000, Susan was diagnosed with breast cancer, and it was one of those journeys with, again, some things in life are brilliant and never change. You never forget it. I had worked downtown Washington. We're in suburban McLean, Virginia. Come home. I usually work till 7 at night. Walked in the door, and she's making dinner, and she says, "Oh, by the way, I had my physical check out. My intern said everything's fine." But she found something under my right breast and thought I should have it checked out. She doesn't think it's anything to worry about. Well, it turned out to be breast cancer. It's one of these stories, and I did write the play. The story, the doctor says, "Oh, I agree. I think it's just scar tissue from an earlier biopsy. We'll check it out." Well, they checked it out, and not only was it breast cancer, but what they took out to check, it was only breast cancer. That is breast cancer. There was no margin. That is where there was a cancer-free part. And they go through treatment. They go through a double mastectomy, and they do all the testing, and they say, "Good news, there's no breast cancer in your lymph glands." Of course, later on they said, "Well, that was a mistake." And the impact on me, which I didn't realize right away, and it took me a little while to understand it. I tend to call it post-traumatic spiritual disorder. It bothered me. It was there, but I couldn't express it
Well, plus
And
Sam, Susan's, and correct me if I'm wrong, but your grandmother, or your
mother.
both mothers, both of your mothers passed away from breast cancer.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, her mother was at 56 years old. Susan was 54 when this happened. So it was as if it was written in stone. That was the feeling. And and oddly, I'd never written a play before. I was actually, used to be a lawyer, worked for Ralph Nader, had a public affairs company. Me in theater, I I did a little community theater, and I'd been encouraged. I connected with a group in New York that did theatrical improv. I was lucky enough to. They had one of their teachers was one of the best improv teachers in the country. He was from Los Angeles. He founded the Ground Wings. His name was Gary Austin. And during one of those exercises, I started talking about Dr. Happy. Who's Dr. Happy? Well, it was the breast surgeon. He was the guy in our real life experience who said, "Oh, don't worry all the time." And then he was wrong each time. And I called him Dr. Happy. And it was finding that character that led me to, all right, maybe I should try to write something. And I worked with some people who were friends. There was a theatrical friend who helped people write plays, and it was in some workshops. And I discovered, and I love this about theater, I discovered things that without doing it theatrically, I didn't understand. There was a phenomenon. It's interesting in both plays. This what we're talking about with Susan. By the way, Susan was always Susan. She never became someone else, which is going to be an important distinction with caregiving and I hate the word dementia, but memory loss. We go with memory loss.
So, Sam, you created this play going through her journey. And then how long afterwards were you diagnosed? So during that, your perspective there is as the caregiver, but then when did things turn around? When were you diagnosed and when did you become the patient?
Well, what's interesting is around 2018, right, that I was having some issues. That was things that I knew were bothering me. But one of the interesting things I just want, and they were progressing, and there's some very specific instances, like driving the wrong way down a one-way street, like not recognizing where I am. It was interesting that they're mostly around that kind of driving situations, getting confused. But what was interesting is that it became clearer during the COVID because I still wanted to perform, but we couldn't go out and theaters were closed. So I started performing over Zoom for many of the Gilda's clubs in the US, but from my basement studio. But I needed Susan to cue me. I would start missing my lines in a play that I've been doing for 7 and 8 years.
10 years at that time.
And I had everything had been memorized, but all of a sudden I'd be blanking. But luckily she was off camera and could whisper the line. And it was odd that it was through theater that it was even brighter, that something was different. Something was changing. It just made no sense.
Sam, so you were diagnosed, am I correct? What year were you diagnosed and what was your official diagnosis?
Well, I started in 2018 with mild cognitive impairment. So and to get that official diagnosis, you go to a neuropsychologist. It's about a 5-hour exam. I was so happy when he said I was mildly cognitively impaired. I literally said, see, there is something wrong with me. I wonder how many people go through this. You're having these troubles, but you get and my internist was saying, I know it's just normal aging. You're overreacting to normal aging. And hearing that there was something abnormal, not there was something wrong, was a relief to hear.
You know what, Sam, I can relate because when Bob was finally diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment, when people ask me, well, how did you react? How did you feel? I was relieved because I knew that there was something wrong and I just couldn't figure out what was wrong. He was always so great with finances, always so great with time and scheduling. And then suddenly he wasn't. And then, so yes, for me, I absolutely can relate to that.
And it's so important today. And this is relatively new. Although, I mean, it's also a discovery for me as I go through this and do the play, which I hadn't been doing before. Encouraging people not to be afraid to go get checked.
Yeah.
Go to a neurologist, take the test. Among other things, there are now medicines that are helpful more than there used to be.
Yes.
They're more helpful when you're earlier stage.
So, Sam, you were diagnosed with, pardon me for interrupting, you were diagnosed with MCI, and then when were you officially diagnosed with Alzheimer's?
2021.
2022.
Oh, thought it was 21.
I think it's 2022. So go through 2018, 2019. It's interesting. It's not easy to get. So how do you get diagnosed? At the time, it's different today. At the time, getting diagnosed with Alzheimer's required a PET scan with contrast. They run $3,000 to $5,000, and they're just beginning to, but even now, they're generally not covered by Medicare or by insurance. And that first intern, a neurologist, didn't encourage me to do it. In fact, he sort of said, you probably won't want to do it. It's just too expensive. And it wouldn't make any difference. Well, not exactly true, but a lot of people think that. And it took a while because we had to get this second opinion. We went to Georgetown, and it takes forever to get appointments, right? And there's a moment, going in to get a diagnosis. It's almost like with Susan. Now it's reversed. It's, they're finding that the lump on Susan. The doctors, in Susan's case, pulled me aside and said, it's not going to end well. Get ready. I mean, we went for quite a while. Now we're whatever years later.
How many years cancer free? How many years from the time the doctor said this is not going to end well? How many years has it been, Susan?
It's been 24 and a half years.
That's awesome, Susan. It's fantastic.
Unbelievable.
And though I am a little better, I still worry every time
I don't think you ever stop worrying when she goes in to be tested.
Yeah.
Well, it's more typical stomach or brain. So every time,
right.
Those are the most likely metastasis for breast.
Mm-hmm.
Not the only places, but most likely. And so every time she's complaining of a headache or a stomach ache, it sits in the back of my head.
So Sam, you're diagnosed, and then you create this play. Why?
Well, it's not the first reaction, right? The first, what do you do? There's a bit of bending over. There's a bit of, I was first diagnosed with MCI, and I was at a theater conference of artists who, like me, and I would tell them, they said, write about it. And it was their encouragement ultimately that said, all right, I'll give it, because I couldn't imagine writing when my memory was going. And I have a dramaturg, a person who worked with, and helped me write my previous play. And I talked to her, and she said, yeah, I'd like to take on it's a challenge and opportunity to work on it. And a lot of encouragement.
Sam, what is the main focus of the play? And then we'll take a look. We'll show folks what is the main focus and why did you create it?
You need to know me. I will tell you, it's about making change. It is about living a meaningful life with the disease, and it is an advocacy piece. It's helpful to know that I was a consumer advocate. I worked for Ralph Nader. I had a career. I was on the Oprah Winfrey Show, and all the news shows as an advocate. And, the neurology, and so it's an advocacy piece.
Let's take a moment and just take a look at Sam's one-man play.
Oh, damned, I'm here again. I can't believe this place exists. Nothingness. No light, yet I have eyes. No sound, yet I have ears. No smell, no taste, no feel, no touch. My feet move, yet there is no floor. There must be a door. There must be another side. There has to be. I know I'm not dead. Well, at least I think I know I'm not dead. I wonder what the Sam of me then will know about the Sam of me now. And the lesson underneath that was, I still will be someone. I choose to believe that there's a human being back there living in a universe of its own, his own or her own. Will they know anything about me? Maybe they will. Maybe that entity can see things even better than we do today. In my heart, I do not want to go. I do not want to end it all now. Yet I am caught up in the center of the cyclone of nothingness.
Wow, that's pretty fantastic, Sam.
Thank you. The first clear piece of advocacy is that life with the disease is worth living. I'm a strong critic of accompanied suicide. Part of the energy, I'll say it, I'm never going to mention the name of the book, but there was a relatively new book out in which the author tells about her husband, Brian, who was diagnosed with early stage Alzheimer's, my diagnosis, and how hard it was for them to go to Switzerland so he could kill himself, and he did. And I heard a podcast where the host of it was commiserating, we should have it everywhere in this country. Anybody wants to, and I've since learned that some of the people I've even known have made this choice, go to Switzerland and kill yourself rather than go through the process of the disease. So I'm a big voice opposing that choice because I think we have gifts, not the least of which is maybe there's something about me, who knows, or about anybody that has just one little thing that will help find a cure one day. If it advances the date of the cure by a nanosecond, my journey will be worth it. So that's one. Two, I think we should have accommodations. We call them cognitive navigators. Susan is my cognitive navigator. As available to us as curb cuts have been to people who need mobility accessibility. If you go to airports now, I'll grab it right now. You can get these lanyards that you wear with a little tag at the bottom, and it says hidden disability, but it tells them, the yellow flower, that you have a cognitive impairment. And we were just at the airport not too long ago. I was wearing it. I went through the TSA line. The TSA agent looked at her and said, "Are you with him?" And she said, "Yes." And he hurried her up. He knew I needed help.
Oh.
And
I hadn't heard
we want
of those.
that everywhere.
Heard of them,
Really?
yeah. It's really great.
Heard of it. Wow.
It's really great.
But we want that kind of help. We do it for other disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
We do it for people in wheelchairs. We do it for people blind. And you can go to a theater now, and you'll have captioning and audio description.
Yes.
But for us, it's assumed we can't handle it or whatever. So that's the other piece of it. Let's see. There's two more. So dignity, and that there's dignity, accommodation, no assisted suicide, and I think there was one other thing.
Assisted suicide against it. If you can add one, if you can help, even for a nanosecond, somebody else or find some sort of cure.
I'm sorry. I remember. Thank you. The other, you're going to get rid of the word dementia.
It's funny because I've several times you've referenced you don't like the word dementia, but you're known as Dementia Man.
You're not the first person who's pointed that
out. I wouldn't imagine I was.
It's the word there is used for marketing. I love, dementia. I'm not crazy. I'm not mad. I'm not insane. The word comes from that perspective. It is a degrading word. It is as if I am not human. It's as if I'm literally just a mad person. I have an illness, I have a disease, and it makes me less able to recognize the world as other people or to understand it, and I need unique help.
Kind of a gloss on that is worse than dementia. Is the noun dementia is being demented. And I use that in sort of a self-deprecating way, with some humor, because, yeah, guys, I'm demented, and it kind of focuses back on dementia, on how that's really an unfair label. At least to apply to me, and I'm in early stage Alzheimer's. Okay, so I'm in the same place as you are, in terms of diagnosis. But I have enough awareness that at least I see the humor in it. I'm far from demented. I may suffer from aphasia. I may have issues with communication skills, but I'm still aware, and I'm still able to observe and comment but anyway, that's
you're right, and in the play I agree with you. I didn't mean to. I say demented, but terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're both. And demented is is almost an accusation. It's almost a degrading. But it's part of it comes from the same place. But you're absolutely right. A couple of things. One of the first comments by an audience member, I love how the audiences affect me and how much I learn from my audiences. But hearing it from people who've been through the journey, and it was a woman. It was the very first time I performed it. I had performed at a Fringe festival, but then I performed it in an audience, and the audience member stood up and said, "My husband was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and he came home and he went into his room and he never came out." And that was a figurative, but I think we all understand what happened. Mm-hmm. He just curled up and he gave up. And I think language is part of that. And what we can imagine what it means for us. And it's so moving. And then the other thing I get, by the way, is, again, so interesting to me. I would never, I couldn't have known it. I'm new in this world in so many ways, too. People, a lot of the very first questions are, "Thank you. My husband or my aunt had the disease." And I never really understood what was going on in their head. And I think I know a little bit, maybe what that might have been like. Because particularly I try to describe the nothingness place. I say, I have no idea what it was, but thank you for letting me know it's helped you. But
I love your positive outlook, Sam, both of yours. Sam, thank you for that positive outlook, because there's a reason why we call our podcast Living Our Best with Memory Loss, right? And you certainly represent that.
But you can't do it without, I want to talk a little bit about my care partner. I call it care partner. And, we are unique in the sense we're on both sides. We're both have been on now each side of the journey. If there's something I have to give with my journey through this disease, let me do it. Let me give my best shot at it. So that's the picture.
Your story.
That's my story. I also like to make trouble while I'm doing it.
I like that. I like that a lot. I think one of the things that is a recurring theme with everyone we interview is that they are being intentional and living life on purpose and with a purpose. And I certainly see that in your work and in Susan's support. You know, I'm curious, Susan, how do you think that Sam's artistic and creative way of processing things, how has that affected you?
Well, he loves the theater. I mean, as I say to people, I think it would be much harder being a care partner for someone if they didn't have a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that this purpose keeps him going. And even when he has a bad day, you can say, okay, get up the next day, and this will be something maybe we want to add into the play. And we have to find time to laugh. And
Absolutely.
That's the good thing about it.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, so first of all, I'm so lucky to have her. And I know that. And maybe we're lucky to have each other.
Sam, I have a question. Are you finding yourself, when you're doing these shows, it's getting more difficult for you, or is it about the same?
Well, we have two accommodations. I carry the script in my hand, and Susan is my cognitive navigator, announced as that. She sits on the front row, and she has a script and is there to help me. So it's a yes and answer. Yes, it's getting a little bit more difficult, and we have this accommodation that becomes part of the play. And
I love that.
Yeah, I love that.
Because that's the reality, and that's the diagnosis.
Yeah. And in reality, in the performance, if I screw up, people don't know if it's planned or scripted or not.
Yeah, it's true.
Perfect.
It's perfect, yeah.
Where can people see your play, and do you have a listing of where you're going to be at different times coming up?
We have the website, dementiaman.com, and we list our performances. I do have people can sign up to get, there's two quick things. Sign up on the site to be part of a mailing list. I do a weekly blog right now, video blog myself. I occasionally have and talk about things I learn, and occasionally I have guests as well. And you can be part of that if you want to.
Sam and Susan, what a joy
Thank
you are.
you.
Thank you so much. And
Well, you guys
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love that you're doing this, by the way. It is
Thank you.
so important. And, the biggest, you caught it. You were right from the beginning, living your best wit.
I genuinely feel that through your play and everything you're doing and your passion, you are saving lives, Sam.
I hope so. And hopefully you too, guys.
So thank you.
Keep going. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.